My wife told me the family vacation was cancelled. Too tight this year, just staying in. So, I spent the day working. That afternoon, my wife's sister posted a video, a full house, turkey carving, family-only invitations. Everyone was there except me. I stayed silent until wife texted, "Venmo me $3,000. It's urgent." I replied, "Ask the family you chose." Then I cut off every payment and watched the fallout. Look, I'm not the kind of guy who throws tantrums when things don't go my way. I'm an engineer, for crying out loud. We solve problems with logic, spreadsheets, and the occasional stress-induced energy drink binge at 2 a.m. So, when my wife Laura sat me down at the kitchen table with that serious face she reserves for bad news and discount shoe sales, I figured we were about to have a real adult conversation about our finances. You know, the kind where two mature people acknowledge that life's expensive and sometimes you've got to make sacrifices. Real heartwarming stuff. "Honey," she said, doing that thing where she touches my hand like I'm a golden retriever about to hear, "he can't go to the park. The family vacation's off this year. Money's just too tight right now." She gave me these puppy dog eyes that could have won an Oscar, and honestly, I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker like an absolute chump. I nodded like the responsible, understanding husband I apparently was back then. "Sure, babe," I said, probably sounding like I just agreed to donate a kidney. Times are tough. It's 2025. Everyone's broke unless they're selling crypto or feet pics on the internet. I even threw in a supportive shoulder squeeze because I'm nothing if not a team player. We're in this together, right? For better or worse, in sickness and health, in poverty and whatever the opposite of poverty is that we clearly weren't experiencing. So, I did what any beautiful spouse would do. I canceled my vacation leave at work, which, let me tell you, was about as fun as canceling Christmas. My boss actually looked concerned when I told him I wasn't taking time off. "You sure, man? You've been here 3 years and haven't used half your PTO. That's not healthy." But no, I insisted. Got to stay home. Got to save money. Got to be the rock of financial responsibility while the economy does whatever nightmare thing it's doing this week. I even, and this is where I really deserve a medal for husband of the century, offered to pick up extra shifts at the engineering firm, more billable hours, more overtime, more money for the family fund because that's what we do when times are tough, right? We buckle down, we sacrifice, we adult so hard it hurts. That morning started like any other day in my newly vacation-free existence. I was parked at my home desk, drowning in project reports that read like they've been written by robots having existential crisis. CAD files, stress calculations, client emails asking why things cost money. The usual engineering glamour. My coffee was getting cold. My neck was developing that special kind of ache that screams you need a better chair and also a vacation. And I was generally living my best budget-conscious life. Then I saw it, the notification that would fundamentally alter my understanding of marriage, trust, and what constitutes acceptable behavior in a committed relationship. Laura had posted a photo on social media because of course she had, because this is 2025 and if you didn't post it, did it even happen? The photo showed her in full makeup, the kind that takes 45 minutes and 3 YouTube tutorials to achieve, wearing a sun hat that probably cost more than our last grocery run. She was smiling like she just won the lottery. Or at least like someone who definitely wasn't experiencing a crushing budget crisis. The caption, "Working from home today, son." Working from home with a sun hat, right? Because nothing says remote spreadsheet warrior like looking ready for a garden party in the Hamptons. I stared at that photo for a solid 30 seconds, my engineer brain trying to calculate the probability that she was in fact working from our home and not say literally anywhere else on planet Earth. The math wasn't matting as the kids say or used to say. I don't know. I'm busy working to afford a vacation I'm apparently not invited to. But hey, maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just feeling cute, wanted to boost her mood during these tough financial times. Maybe the sun hat was on sale, and she was practicing self-care on a budget. I'm a reasonable man. I can give people the benefit of the doubt. I went back to my reports, tried to focus on load-bearing calculations, and almost managed to convince myself everything was fine. Then 2 p.m. rolled around like a wrecking ball aimed directly at my naive little heart. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram, her sister Becky's account, which I followed purely out of family obligation and not because I actually wanted to see 40 photos of her overpriced lattes and inspirational quotes about living your truth. But this wasn't a latte. This wasn't a quote. This was a full HD video that would have been better suited for a food magazine spread or perhaps as evidence in my upcoming divorce proceedings. The video panned across what can only be described as a dining setup that Martha Stewart would weep over. We're talking a full roasted turkey, golden, glistening, probably organic and free range, and personally blessed by a celebrity chef. There were cousins laughing like they were auditioning for a stock photo about family happiness. There were side dishes that could feed a small village. There was champagne. Champagne, the kind that comes in bottles, not boxes, which was already suspicious given our supposed financial situation. And there, right in the center of this Norman Rockwell painting come to life, was my wife Laura, my budget-conscious, vacation-canceling, we're so broke wife. She was wearing a floral dress that I'd definitely never seen before. The kind that makes you look like you're about to frolic through a meadow or star in a commercial about yogurt that makes you happy. Her hair was done. Her makeup was perfect. She was pouring champagne like she was celebrating the fact that her husband was home alone eating leftover pasta and contemplating his life choices. But here's the kicker. The caption that really twisted the knife and then set it on fire for good measure. Family-only vacation. Nothing beats tradition. Turkey red heart sparkles. Family only. Family only. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. I checked my marriage certificate. Yep, still valid. I checked the calendar. Yep, still married. I checked my bank account. Yep, still funding this whole operation. But apparently somewhere in the fine print of our wedding vows, there was a clause that said family was a flexible term that could exclude the person legally bound to you when it was convenient for turkey dinners and Instagram content. I sat there at my desk, project reports forgotten, cold coffee mocking me, staring at this video of my wife living her best life at what was clearly not a budget-friendly gathering. The turkey alone probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The wine, forget about it. The matching floral arrangements on the table, someone had money to burn, and apparently that someone had been getting monthly deposits from yours truly, right? Guess I was just the +1 who expired. The family member with an asterisk. The husband except when there's a vacation involved. I replayed that video one more time just to make absolutely sure I wasn't hallucinating from too much engineering work and not enough vacation. Nope. Still there, still smiling. Still very much on a family vacation that I had been explicitly told we couldn't afford. And that's when I realized I wasn't having a budget crisis. I was having a clarity crisis because suddenly everything was becoming very, very clear. So here's the thing about betrayal in the digital age. It comes with receipts, high-definition time-stamped geo-tagged receipts that you can watch over and over again until you've memorized every soul-crushing detail. And that's exactly what I did with Becky's little vacation video. I replayed that sucker 12 times. 12. I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not ashamed because each viewing revealed a new layer of what the actual hell that I'd somehow missed before. First viewing, shock. Second viewing, denial. Third through fifth, anger with a side of disbelief. 6th through 10, forensic analysis that would make a detective jealous. 11. Acceptance. 12. Pure unadulterated rage mixed with the kind of clarity you only get when you realize you've been played like a fiddle at a country music concert. I zoomed in on that video like I was enhancing evidence for a crime scene investigation, which let's be honest, this basically was. There was my father-in-law, Richard, carving that turkey with the precision and showmanship of a Food Network host who definitely wasn't worried about money being too tight. He had this smile on his face, the kind of satisfied grin that comes from a man who's about to enjoy a meal he didn't have to budget for because some sucker, that would be me, had been padding his bank account every single month like clockwork. And there was Laura, my wonderful, budget-conscious we can't afford a vacation wife, pouring champagne like she was celebrating New Year's Eve at a 5-star resort. Not the cheap stuff either. I could tell from the bottle shape. We're talking the real deal. The kind that costs more per bottle than I spend on lunch for a week. Her hands weren't shaking with guilt. She wasn't looking around nervously wondering if her husband might see this. Nope. She was living in the moment, fully committed to this family-only experience, completely unbothered by the fact that she'd lied straight to my face 72 hours earlier. But the real kicker, the table, that glorious, abundant, absolutely not budget-friendly table. I zoomed in on the spread and started doing a mental inventory because that's what engineers do when we're spiraling. We quantify things. There was the turkey, obviously, which had to be at least 20 pounds of organic free range, probably named it before the cooked poultry. There were side dishes that stretched from one end of the table to the other. Mashed potatoes that looked like they'd been whipped by angels. Green bean casserole. Sweet potato something or other with marshmallows on top. Cranberry sauce that was definitely homemade and not from a can like normal broke people use. And then I spotted the seafood. We're talking shrimp cocktail, crab legs, what looked like lobster tails just casually chilling there like they hadn't cost someone's entire paycheck. This table had more seafood than an ocean buffet at a Las Vegas casino. This was not the table of a family in financial crisis. This was the table of people who had money to burn and apparently no shame about burning it while telling me we needed to tighten our belts. Me? I was nowhere in that video. Not in the background, not at the table, not even mentioned in the caption. It was like I'd been photoshopped out of the family, except they didn't even need Photoshop because they just straight up not invited me. I didn't exist in their little vacation bubble. I was Schrodinger's husband, simultaneously married to Laura, and also completely irrelevant to family events. That's when I decided to do some investigating of my own because clearly I couldn't trust anyone to tell me the truth. I opened my banking app with the kind of dread you feel when you're about to confirm your worst suspicions. My hands were shaking a little, which annoyed me because I'm a grown man and I shouldn't be getting the stress tremors over a bank app, but here we were. I navigated to our joint account first, the one Laura and I supposedly shared for household expenses and mutual financial goals. Everything looked normal there. Mortgage payment, utilities, groceries, the usual stuff that keeps life running. But then I clicked over to my personal checking account, the one linked to my paycheck, and that's where things got interesting in the way that interesting actually means absolutely infuriating. There they were, lined up like little soldiers of financial deception. Recurring transfers. Every single month, like clockwork, $3,000 vanishing from my account. The category, family expenses. I scrolled back through the history. 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, $3,000, month after month after month, going to Laura's family. Not our family, not the mortgage or our future or our retirement or literally anything that benefited both of us, her family. I did the math because that's what you do when your entire reality is crumbling and you need something concrete to hold on to. 12 months time $3,000 equals $36,000 a year. 2 years, $72,000. That's a new car. That's a down payment on a second property. That's a retirement fund that could actually retire. That's 72,000 reasons why we supposedly couldn't afford a vacation while her family was out here living like they had won the lottery. They said money's too tight. But that table had more food on it than most people see at Thanksgiving. They said we needed to budget, but they were popping champagne bottles like they were celebrating something. They said family vacation was canceled, but what they meant was my inclusion in the family vacation was canceled while my bank account was still expected to show up and participate. I sat there staring at those transactions, feeling like the world's biggest idiot. How had I not noticed this before? How had I just blindly approved these transfers month after month without asking questions? Oh, right. Because I trusted my wife. Because I believed her when she said her parents needed help. Because I'm apparently the kind of person who gets taken advantage of and says, "Thank you. May I have another?" But not anymore. Oh, no. Not anymore. I was done being the ATM with a wedding ring. I was done funding vacations I wasn't invited to. I was done being the invisible family member whose only value was his direct deposit. So, I did what any calm, rational, definitely not having a breakdown husband would do. I clicked on every single one of those recurring transfers and hit cancel with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for popping bubble wrap or watching your enemy trip in public. Cancel. 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 $3,000 a month. Terminated effective immediately. Then, because I'm petty and I was running on pure spite at this point, I renamed the transfer folder. Used to be labeled family support or something equally noble sounding. Now, for people who actually like me, I even added a little emoji, the shrug guy. If I was going to burn bridges, I might as well make them pretty. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my handiwork, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Powerful, in control, like I'd just taken back a piece of myself that had been slowly bleeding out through monthly bank transfers and lies disguised as budget concerns. My phone buzzed with a notification, probably another Instagram update from the family-only vacation. I didn't even look at it. I didn't need to. I'd seen everything I needed to see. I'd learned everything I needed to learn. And most importantly, I'd done everything I needed to do. The turkey was carved. The champagne was poured. And my automatic payments were canceled. Let's see how long the party lasts when the money train pulls into reality station. I closed my laptop, grabbed my cold coffee, and took a sip, even though it tasted like bitter regret and old dreams. Seemed appropriate. Everything else in my life had gone cold. Might as well commit to the theme. $3,000 a month gone just like that. And you know what? It felt absolutely fantastic. 3 days. That's how long it took for the consequences of my financial independence to come knocking. 3 glorious, peaceful days where I went to work, came home, made myself dinner without consulting anyone about budgets, and slept like a man who'd finally canceled his subscription to a service he never wanted in the first place. I was living my best life, or at least a significantly less financially abused version of it. I should have known the peace wouldn't last. Peace never lasts when you've cut off someone's money supply. It's like cutting the power to a house. Eventually, someone's going to notice the lights don't work anymore and come asking questions. In this case, that someone was Laura, and those questions came in the form of a text message that popped up on my phone while I was in the middle of a meeting about load-bearing structures. Ironic considering I'd just stopped being everyone's emotional and financial load-bearer. My phone buzzed on the conference table and I glanced down out of habit. The preview was enough to make me smile in a way that probably concerned my coworkers. "Hey babe, can you Venmo me $3,000? Urgent. Urgent." That was Rich. Everything was always urgent when it came to her family's needs. But apparently inviting me to family gatherings was more of a whenever we feel like it kind of situation, which is to say never. I excused myself from the meeting, walked out into the hallway, and just stared at that text message like it was a piece of modern art. I was trying to understand the audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of this woman to ask me for $3,000 after what had happened. But here's the thing about having your eyes open to manipulation. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That text message wasn't a request from my loving wife who needed help. It was a transaction request from someone who'd gotten used to me being a human ATM and was now confused about why the machine wasn't dispensing cash anymore. And you know what? I was done being a machine. I was done being convenient. I was done being the solution to problems I didn't create and apparently wasn't important enough to be included in the celebrations that my money funded. So, I smiled. Not a happy smile, more like the smile of a man who's about to watch karma do its thing in real time. I typed out my response with the kind of care and precision I usually reserve for engineering calculations. Every word mattered. Every period was placed with intention. This was going to be good. Ask the family you chose. 6 words, simple, direct, packed with more meaning than a philosophy textbook. I hit send and felt a rush of satisfaction that probably wasn't healthy, but felt absolutely amazing. Anyway, it was like finally saying the thing you've been thinking for years, but were too polite to verbalize. Well, guess what? I was done being polite. Polite got me excluded from vacations while my bank account got a front row seat. I watched the message change from delivered to read in real time. Then I watched as those 3 little dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, disappeared again. She was typing and deleting, typing and deleting. I could practically feel her confusion through the phone. This wasn't how things usually went. Usually, I just said, "Sure, babe," and moved the money without question, like the good little ATM I was supposed to be. 30 seconds later, I know because I counted because I'm petty like that. My phone started vibrating in my hand. Laura was calling. Of course, she was calling. Text messages are easy to ignore or misinterpret, but a phone call, that's when you know someone's really confused or really angry or both. I let it ring twice before answering just to make her sweat a little. Is that childish? Absolutely. Do I care? Not even a little bit. "Hello," I answered using my most casual voice like I hadn't just dropped a bomb on our entire financial arrangement. "What does that mean?" Her voice was sharp with an edge of panic that honestly felt like music to my ears. Not because I wanted her to panic, but because it meant she was finally understanding that something had fundamentally changed. I could have played dumb. I could have pretended I didn't know what she was talking about. But where's the fun in that? Where's the growth? Where's the standing up for yourself and refusing to be treated like a second-class citizen in your own marriage? "It means," I said, keeping my voice calm and level like I was explaining a basic engineering concept to a first-year student. "I finally took your budgeting advice. I'm tightening things up, too. You know, being fiscally responsible, cutting unnecessary expenses, all that good stuff you were so concerned about 3 days ago when you told me we couldn't afford a vacation." The silence on the other end of the line was beautiful. And I mean beautiful in the way that silence can be when it's filled with the sound of someone's entire worldview crashing down around them. It was the silence of realization, of consequences meeting actions, of the chickens coming home to roost and finding out the coop had been foreclosed. You can't be serious," she finally said, and I could hear her trying to figure out if I was joking. Spoiler alert, I wasn't joking. I'd never been more serious about anything in my entire life, including my wedding vows, which apparently meant more to me than they did to her. "Oh, I'm absolutely serious," I replied. And I was still smiling even though she couldn't see it. Maybe she could hear it in my voice, though. That edge of satisfaction that comes from finally standing up for yourself after being stepped on for way too long. "See, I did some thinking after you canceled our vacation due to budget concerns. I thought, you know what? She's right. We should be more careful with money. We should really examine where our dollars are going and whether those expenses are actually benefiting us. Both of us together as a married couple." I could hear her breathing on the other end. Quick and shallow. The kind of breathing that happens when someone's getting angry or stressed or both. Good. Let her feel a fraction of what I felt watching that video of the family vacation. I apparently wasn't family enough to attend. So, I looked at our accounts. I continued really getting into it now, and I found some interesting recurring expenses. $3,000 a month interesting going to your family every single month for years, funding lake houses and turkey dinners and champagne brunches and apparently vacations that I'm not invited to because money's too tight. That's different. She started, but I cut her off because nope, we weren't doing this. We weren't doing the thing where she tried to justify or explain or make excuses for why it was totally fine to lie to my face and exclude me from family events while draining my bank account. It's not different, I said, my voice harder now. It's exactly the same. It's money leaving our household. Money that could have paid for the vacation you canceled. Money that could have done a lot of things, but instead it paid for a party I wasn't invited to. And honestly, I'm done paying for parties I'm not invited to. I'm done funding a family that doesn't consider me family. More silence. This one felt different though. Less shocked, more angry. I could practically hear her gearing up for a fight, getting ready to throw out all the usual arguments about how her parents needed help, about family obligations, about how I was being selfish and cruel, and probably several other things that would be designed to make me feel guilty and reverse my decision. But here's the thing about clarity. Once you have it, it's really hard to guilt trip someone back into ignorance. So, to answer your original question, I said, wrapping this up before she could launch into whatever speech she was preparing, no, I won't Venmo you $3,000. Not today, not tomorrow, not until someone can explain to me why I'm family enough to fund vacations, but not family enough to attend them. Ask the people you actually chose to spend time with. Ask the family that was important enough to include in your family-only vacation. I'm sure they've got the money. I've been sending it to them for years. Her voice came back cold and sharp. You're being ridiculous. This is about my parents potentially losing their house. Then maybe I interrupted. They should have thought about that before planning an expensive vacation and posting about it on social media. Just a thought, you know, from someone who actually understands budgeting. I hung up before she could respond. Just pressed that red button and ended the call. And let me tell you, it felt incredible. It felt like reclaiming power I'd given away without even realizing it. It felt like respect, self-respect, the kind you can only get when you finally stop letting people treat you like you're optional. My phone immediately started buzzing again. Laura calling back, probably ready to really lay into me now. I declined the call. She called again, declined. Again, declined. After the fourth attempt, I just turned my phone to silent and went back to my meeting about load-bearing structures. Turns out, I just tested my own load-bearing capacity. And guess what? I was stronger than I thought. You know what's wild about people who get caught doing shady things? They don't apologize. They don't acknowledge what they did wrong. No, they gaslight you so hard you start wondering if maybe you're the crazy one for being upset about it. And Laura, oh, she had a PhD in gaslighting that I swear she earned somewhere between our wedding day and the turkey dinner I wasn't invited to. She came home that evening acting like nothing had happened. Not like, oops, we had a fight. Let me ease back in a normal conversation. Nothing happened. I mean, full-on Oscar-worthy performance of a woman who genuinely believed that if she just acted normal enough, reality would bend to accommodate her delusion. She walked through the door, dropped her purse on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and said, I kid you not. What do you want for dinner? I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work, but actually scrolling through job listings in cities far away from this circus. I looked up at her like she just asked me to solve a quantum physics equation using only interpretive dance. Excuse me, dinner, she repeated. Opening the fridge like this was just another Tuesday and not the day she tried to Venmo shake me down for $3,000 after excluding me from a family vacation. I was thinking maybe we could do that pasta thing you like, the one with the garlic. And you're joking, right? I closed my laptop and just stared at her. You're actually standing there asking me about pasta like you didn't just get caught lying to my face about budget issues while vacationing with your family on my dime? She sighed. Actually sighed like I was the one being difficult, like I was the problem here. She closed the fridge door and turned to face me with this expression that I can only describe as patient mother dealing with a toddler throwing a tantrum. You're overreacting, she said. And those two words right there, that's how I knew we were entering the gaslight zone. You're overreacting is the battle cry of people who know they messed up but are hoping you'll doubt yourself enough to let it slide. Overreacting, I repeated, tasting the word like it was something rotten. I'm overreacting. That's your take on this situation. It was a small family thing, she continued, moving into the living room like she was going to sit down next to me and have a reasonable conversation. I shifted away before she could get too close. I wasn't falling for the physical proximity trick, the one where she sits next to me and touches my arm. And suddenly, I'm supposed to forget that I have a functioning brain. You hate crowded places anyway. I thought I was doing you a favor. A favor? She thought excluding me from a family vacation I'd been funding for 2 years was a favor. This woman really said that out loud with her whole chest and expected me to nod along like it made sense. Oh, right, I said, my voice dripping with enough sarcasm to corrode metal. I must have missed the survey where you asked if I wanted to be excluded. You know, the one where you consulted me about whether I'd prefer to stay home working while you all lived it up on my monthly $3,000 donations. That survey. Refresh my memory. When did I fill that out? She rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes at me like I was being absurd. Don't be dramatic. You were working. You told me you picked up extra shifts. I didn't want to disturb you with family stuff when you were so busy being responsible. There it was. The twist, the spin. Suddenly, my decision to work extra, a decision I made because she told me we couldn't afford a vacation, was being used as justification for why they didn't invite me to the vacation we supposedly couldn't afford. It was beautiful in a horrifying kind of way, like watching someone build a house of cards during an earthquake and insisting it's structurally sound. You disturb me anyway, I said, leaning forward digitally on Becky's Instagram. You know the post with the caption family only vacation? That one disturbed me quite a bit. Actually really interrupted my workflow when I saw my wife pouring champagne at a feast that could feed a small nation while I was eating leftover pizza because we're supposedly broke. She had the audacity to look annoyed. Not guilty. Not apologetic. Annoyed. So this is what this is about. Social media. You're punishing my entire family because of an Instagram caption. No, I said, standing up because I needed the height advantage for this conversation. I'm stopping financial support to people who don't consider me family. There's a difference, a pretty significant one, actually. One involves punishment. The other involves basic self-respect and financial boundaries. That's when she switched tactics. I could see it happening in real time, like watching someone change lanes without signaling. Her face shifted from annoyed to concerned. Her voice got softer, and here came the guilt trip I'd been waiting for. My parents could lose their house if you stopped sending money, she said quietly. And there were actual tears forming in her eyes. Actual tears for a house that her parents apparently had enough money to leave for a luxury vacation, but not enough money to maintain without my monthly contributions. Make it make sense. I wanted to feel bad. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned over years of marriage to prioritize her feelings over my own dignity, wanted to cave right there. Wanted to say, okay, you're right. I'll turn the transfers back on. But then I remembered the turkey, the champagne, the lobster tails, the caption, the lies. Oh, no, I said, and I made sure my voice was loaded with the most theatrical concern I could muster. I even put my hand over my heart for dramatic effect. Maybe they can Airbnb that dining room they used for my funeral. You know, the one where you all gathered to celebrate family while I was dead to you. That dining room, I bet it's nice. Probably has good natural lighting for Instagram photos. Should rent for a decent price. Her tears dried up real quick after that. Funny how that happens. That's not fair. She snapped. We weren't celebrating your absence. We were just having a normal family gathering. With a family-only caption. I reminded her, let's not forget that part. The part where you specifically clarified that this event was for family only, which apparently I'm not, despite being legally bound to you in a relationship that's supposed to make us, you know, family. You're twisting everything, she said. And now her voice was rising. Good. Let it rise. Let her get angry. At least anger was honest. Unlike whatever performance she'd been attempting when she walked through the door asking about pasta. I'm not twisting anything. I shot back. I'm just reading what you wrote. Family only. Your words, not mine. Posted publicly for everyone to see, including me. The guy who's been bankrolling your family's lifestyle for years. I'm sorry if the truth is inconvenient for you, but that's kind of how truth works. She tried a different approach, softening again. Everyone regrets not inviting you now. They feel terrible about it. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud because that was genuinely funny. Sure they do. I bet they're just devastated. Crying into their lobster tails. Weeping over their champagne flutes. So overcome with regret that they what? Called to apologize, texted me directly, sent a carrier pigeon with a note that says, sorry we treated you like garbage. Or did they just express these regrets to you in private while hoping the money train would start running again? She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. That's what I thought. I said, people regret things when the ATM stops working. It's amazing how quickly family values return when the cash flow dries up. Really restores your faith in humanity, doesn't it? You're being cruel, she said. And there was real hurt in her voice. Now, part of me felt bad about that. But the bigger part of me, the part that had watched that vacation video 12 times and counted every dollar I'd sent to people who didn't value me, didn't feel bad at all. I'm being honest. I corrected. There's a difference. Cruel would be continuing to fund a family that excludes me and then pretending everything's fine. Cruel would be lying to your face about budget concerns while planning expensive vacations. Cruel would be posting family-only captions about events funded by someone you don't consider family enough to invite. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who's apparently been overreacting this whole time. She started crying again. Real tears this time, not the tactical ones from earlier. She sank onto the couch and put her face in her hands and her shoulders shook with genuine sobs. And I almost felt bad enough to take it all back. Almost wanted to sit next to her and say, okay, let's talk about this rationally. Then I remembered the video caption one more time. Family only. 2 words that had fundamentally redefined my understanding of my place in this marriage. Apparently, my marriage license didn't count as family credentials. Apparently, years of financial support and emotional investment didn't earn me a seat at the table. Apparently, I was family when it came to bills and responsibilities, but not when it came to belonging and celebration. I'm going to bed, I said quietly. In the guest room, you can have the master bedroom to yourself tonight. Consider it practice for what life looks like when you choose everyone else over your spouse. I walked away while she was still crying, and I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much about myself to keep accepting less than I deserved. The Gaslight Gala was over. The performance had ended and I for once was leaving the theater before the encore. You ever notice how when someone messes up, they don't just apologize themselves? No. They activate their entire social network like they're launching a military campaign. They deploy the troops. They call in reinforcements. They turn damage control into a group project. And Laura's family. They had apparently decided that Operation Get the Money Back required a full-scale coordinated effort involving every single person who'd enjoyed the turkey dinner at my expense. It started the next morning. I was barely awake, coffee still brewing, when my phone started buzzing like it had developed a nervous disorder. First text, Becky. Second text, her husband, Ronnie. Third call, Laura's mom, Janice. It was like they'd had a conference call the night before and divided up the manipulation duties. Okay, Becky, you take the casual approach. Ronnie, you go for the bro angle. Mom, you bring out the heavy guilt. Ready? Break. I let the first few calls go to voicemail because I'm not a masochist, and I was genuinely curious what kind of messages they'd leave. Becky's was first, and it was a masterpiece of fake casual concern. Hey, just wanted to check in. Laura mentioned you guys had a little disagreement. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Call me back when you get a chance. A little disagreement, right? Like the Titanic had a little water problem. Like Pompeii had a minor volcanic incident. Minimizing my completely justified anger into a little disagreement was so perfectly on brand for this family that I almost had to admire the audacity. But I didn't call back. Instead, I waited to see what the rest of the PR team would do. Ronnie texted next. Yo man, heard things got heated. Wanna grab a beer and talk it out? Yes, the bro approach. Let's grab a beer and you can explain to me why I'm wrong while pretending we're just 2 guys being guys. Never mind that Ronnie had been at that vacation dinner eating food I'd indirectly paid for. Not saying a word about how maybe they should invite the guy whose money made it possible. But sure, let's grab a beer now that the funding's dried up. What perfect timing. I ignored that, too. My coffee finished brewing and I poured myself a cup, savoring the fact that this was my coffee bought with my money in my kitchen without anyone telling me we couldn't afford the good beans. Small victories, people. Small victories. Then Janice called. Laura's mother, the matriarch, the final boss of the guilt trip dungeon. I knew I had to answer this one because if I didn't, she'd just keep calling until I did. And I had to work today and couldn't spend 8 hours declining calls from a woman who'd perfected the art of making you feel terrible for having boundaries. I answered on the 4th ring. Hello, Janice. Sweetheart, she started and I already knew where this was going because she only called me sweetheart when she wanted something or was about to make me feel guilty about something. I heard about the situation with Laura. I just wanted to call and clear the air. Clear the air, I repeated, taking a sip of my coffee. It was good coffee. Really good. The kind you can afford when you're not sending $3,000 a month to people who don't invite you to their parties. Sure, let's clear it. You go first. There was a pause, like she hadn't expected me to be this direct. Good. Keep them off balance. That's my new strategy in life. Well, she continued, and I could hear her gathering her thoughts, probably running through the speech she'd prepared. I want you to know that what happened wasn't personal. It truly wasn't. We never meant to hurt you. You never meant to hurt me, I said slowly. But you did exclude me from a family vacation while telling me that we couldn't afford said vacation. All while I've been sending you $3,000 a month for 2 years. So, while it may not have been personal, it was definitely intentional. There's a difference. We just thought, she started, but I cut her off because no, we weren't doing the "we just thought" excuse. That's the cousin of "we meant well" and the sibling of "you're overreacting." You thought wrong. I said flatly. You thought I'd be fine with it. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I'd keep sending money regardless of how you treated me. And you know what? That's on me. I'll let you think that. I'll let you all think I was fine being the invisible checkbook. But that's changing now. Families make mistakes, Janice said, deploying the heavy artillery. The family card. The oldest trick in the manipulation handbook. We all make mistakes. What's important is that we move forward together. I had to laugh at that one. Actually laugh out loud. Right there in my kitchen, holding my excellent coffee that I'd bought with money that used to go to these people. Families make mistakes. I repeated. You're absolutely right, Janice. Mistake is forgetting to buy milk. Mistake is double booking a dinner reservation. Mistake is accidentally sending an email to the wrong person. You know what's not a mistake? Planning an entire vacation, filming it, posting it on social media with a family-only caption, and then asking the person you excluded for $3,000 3 days later. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of behavior. Silence on the other end. I was on a roll now, and honestly, it felt incredible. All these years of biting my tongue, of being the good son-in-law, of not making waves, it was all coming out now like water through a broken dam. And you want to talk about moving forward together? I continued, where was that energy when you were planning the vacation? Where was the together when you were carving turkey and popping champagne? Where was the family unity when Laura was telling me we couldn't afford to take time off while you all were literally on vacation? It's funny how together only matters when you need something from me. You're being unfair, Janice said, and her voice had an edge now. The sweetness was wearing off, revealing the manipulation underneath like cheap paint peeling off a wall. Richard and I could lose everything if you stop helping us. Then maybe, I said, and I made sure my voice was crystal clear so she couldn't misunderstand a single word. You should have thought about that before planning an expensive vacation and posting about it on Instagram for everyone to see, including me. Just a thought, you know, from someone who actually understands what financial responsibility looks like. We're family, she said, playing the card again like it was a magic spell that would make me forget everything that had happened. No, I corrected her. You're Laura's family. I'm apparently just the guy who pays for stuff, and I'm done with that role. I'm done being the ATM with a wedding ring. I'm done financing a family that doesn't consider me family enough to include in their celebrations. I'm done pretending that my feelings don't matter as long as my direct deposit shows up on time. So what? Janice's voice turned cold now. You're just going to abandon us after everything we've done for you. And there it was, the final form, the ultimate guilt trip, the "after everything we've done for you" card, which is particularly hilarious when you consider that the main thing they'd done for me was accept my money every month without question. What exactly have you done for me, Janice? I asked, genuinely curious. Please enlighten me. Because from where I'm sitting, I've sent you $72,000 over the past 2 years, and in return, I got excluded from family events and lied to about budget issues. So, please itemize for me what you've done that somehow balances that equation. She sputtered. Actually sputtered. We welcomed you into the family. We included you in holidays. You included me in holidays when it was convenient. I interrupted. You welcomed me into the family as long as I was useful. And the second you had a vacation you actually wanted to enjoy, suddenly I wasn't family enough to invite. So forgive me if I'm not overwhelmed with gratitude for the privilege of funding my own exclusion. I can't believe you're being this selfish. She said. Wow, the projection was strong with this one. I was being selfish. Me, the guy who'd been hemorrhaging money to support people who didn't value him. That was rich. I'm not being selfish. I said calmly. I'm being rational. I'm allocating my resources to people and things that actually value me. That's not selfishness. That's basic self-respect. Something I should have developed years ago, but better late than never, right? Don't come crying to us when you need family support, Janice said. And I could tell she meant it as a threat. But honestly, it sounded like a promise of peace. I won't, I assured her. Don't worry, I'll remember exactly who considered me family and who didn't when I needed support. Thanks for making that distinction so clear. I hung up before she could respond. Didn't even say goodbye. Just pressed that red button and ended the call. And it felt like closing a chapter in a book I never wanted to read in the first place. The phone immediately rang again. Becky, I declined. Ronnie declined. Laura calling from work. Declined. It was like playing whack-a-mole with people who suddenly cared about my feelings now that the money had stopped flowing. I silenced my phone, finished my coffee, and got ready for work. As I was leaving, I saw a group text had started in the family chat, the one I was still somehow included in despite not being family-only vacation material. I opened it against my better judgment. Messages from everyone. Becky, can't believe he's doing this. Ronnie, so ungrateful. Janice, we gave him everything. Richard, Laura's dad, finally chiming in. He'll come around. He always does. I typed out one message to the group. I can see all of these, by the way. And for the record, you didn't give me everything. I gave you everything. $72,000 to be exact. You gave me a family-only vacation caption and a masterclass in conditional acceptance. Not exactly a fair trade. Then I left the group chat entirely. Deleted. Gone. Bye. As I drove to work, my phone kept buzzing with individual messages, but I didn't look. I had work to do, a life to rebuild, and exactly zero interest in being the family PR team's rehabilitation project. They wanted me back. They could start by actually treating me like family. Until then, they could figure out their own budget crisis without my help. Funny how that worked out. A week passed. 7 glorious days of silence from the family PR team. 7 days of me actually enjoying my paycheck. 7 days of sleeping in the guest room because Laura and I were in this weird limbo where we lived in the same house but existed in completely different realities. She kept trying to act like everything was fine while simultaneously giving me the cold shoulder, which is a special kind of cognitive dissonance that probably deserves its own psychology term. Then on day 8, Laura tried again, and this time she came armed with what I can only describe as full rom-com mode. I came home from work to find candles lit in the living room. The expensive ones that smell like bergamot and regret or whatever. And dinner was already made, not takeout. Actual homemade dinner, the kind she used to make when we were dating. And she was trying to convince me she was wife material. She was wearing the dress. You know the one. Every guy knows the one. The dress that's supposed to make you forget every argument you've ever had and turn your brain into smooth mush that just agrees with everything. She'd done her hair, put on makeup, and was smiling at me like we were about to have a romantic evening, and not like we were in the middle of the worst marital crisis of our relationship. Hey, babe, she said, all sweet and soft. I made your favorite. Thought we could have a nice dinner together and talk. I stood in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, looking at this whole setup like it was a crime scene I was trying to piece together. The candles, the dress, the food, the smile. It was all evidence of a woman who thought she could seduce me back into financial submission. And the sad part, a month ago, it probably would have worked. We can talk without the candles, I said, setting my briefcase down. And I'm not really hungry. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Props for resilience, I guess. Come on, just sit with me, please. I really want to make things right. Against my better judgment, and probably because some part of me still loved this woman despite everything, I sat down at the table. She served me a plate of chicken parmesan, which was indeed my favorite, and poured me a glass of wine that probably cost more than it should have given our supposed budget constraints. Babe, she started, and I could tell she'd rehearsed this. Her voice had that carefully modulated quality of someone who'd practiced in front of a mirror. We just wanted one peaceful trip without stress. That's all it was. It wasn't about you. I took a sip of wine. It was good wine. Of course it was. So I'm stressed now, I asked, keeping my voice even. Is that what I am to your family? The stressful element that needed to be removed for everyone to have a good time. No, that's not what I meant, she backtracked quickly. But I wasn't letting this go. Should I start charging rent for the emotional space I take up? I continued, putting down my wine glass. You know, since I'm apparently such a burden on everyone's good time, maybe I can Venmo you monthly payments for the stress I cause by existing in your family orbit. She reached across the table to take my hand, but I pulled away. Not aggressively, just enough to make it clear that physical contact wasn't going to fix this. Her face fell, and I almost felt bad. Everyone regrets not inviting you, she said. And there was real emotion in her voice now. Not the rehearsed kind, but actual feeling. My mom feels terrible. Becky's been crying. Even my dad said he wishes things had gone differently. Sure they do, I said, picking up my fork, but not actually eating anything. People regret things when the ATM stops working. It's like clockwork. Funny how the guilt only shows up when the money disappears. Really makes you think about what people actually value, doesn't it? That's not fair, Laura said. And her eyes were getting watery now. They genuinely feel bad. They want to make it right. Make it right how? I asked, leaning back in my chair. By apologizing? By feeling bad? By lighting some candles and making chicken parmesan and hoping I'll forget that my wife looked me in the eye and said we couldn't afford a vacation while planning to go on one without me. What exactly makes this right, Laura? She started crying. Real tears this time, not the tactical ones from before. They rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto her untouched dinner plate, and I watched it happen with a weird detachment, like I was observing a scientific experiment instead of my marriage falling apart. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. We were all wrong. I should have invited you. I should have told the truth. I should have valued you more than I valued keeping the peace with my family. And you know what? I almost believed her. Almost let those tears soften me up. Almost reached across the table and said it was okay. We could work through this. Almost fell back into the pattern of prioritizing her feelings over my own self-respect. Then I remembered the video caption. Family only. 2 words that were permanently burned into my brain like a brand. You're sorry because I cut off the money, I said quietly. Not because you hurt me. Not because you lied. Not because you excluded me. You're sorry because there are consequences now and consequences are uncomfortable. That's not true, she insisted, wiping at her tears with her napkin. I'm sorry because I love you and I hurt you and I hate that I did that. Do you though? I asked. And I genuinely wanted to know. Do you love me or do you love what I provide? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like I'm valued for my paycheck and tolerated for everything else. And I've got to tell you, that's not what I signed up for when I said I do. She was full on crying now, shoulders shaking, mascara running, the whole dramatic scene. And part of me, the part that had loved her for 5 years, that had married her, that had built a life with her, wanted to comfort her, wanted to be the bigger person and forgive and move forward. But the bigger part of me, the part that had finally woken up after years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own marriage, just sat there and watched. Because you know what? My feelings mattered, too. My hurt mattered too, and I was tired of being the one who always had to be understanding while everyone else got to be selfish. Everyone regrets it, she said again through her tears. Like repetition would make it more meaningful. We all wish we could take it back. I bet you do, I said. I bet you regret it so much. But here's the thing about regret. It doesn't actually change what happened. It doesn't erase the lie. It doesn't unexclude me from that vacation. It doesn't take back the family-only caption. It just means you feel bad now that there are consequences and I'm supposed to what? Pat you on the head and say they're there. At least you feel bad about it. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice breaking. Tell me what I can do to fix this. Tell me what you need. What did I want? That was the question, wasn't it? What could possibly make this right? An apology? Already had that. Didn't fix anything. Money back. I didn't want money back. I wanted respect. Time travel not possible unfortunately. I want you to understand, I said finally, that you can't treat someone like they're optional and then act surprised when they stop showing up. I want you to understand that love isn't just words and candles and chicken parmesan. It's actions. It's choices. It's choosing to include your partner even when it's inconvenient. It's being honest even when the truth is uncomfortable. It's treating them like they matter. Not just when you need something, but all the time. She nodded, still crying, probably agreeing with everything I said because that's what you do when you're desperate to fix something you broke. And I want you to understand, I continued, that I'm not a bank. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a financial resource to be managed and manipulated. I'm a person with feelings and boundaries and self-respect that I'm just now starting to find again after years of letting your family treat me like garbage while I smiled and sent them money. I know, she whispered. I know all of that now. I see it. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. I stood up from the table, my dinner completely untouched. The candles were still burning, making the whole scene feel like a funeral for our marriage instead of a romantic dinner. The thing about learning lessons, I said, is that they're a lot more expensive when you learn them late. You could have learned this lesson years ago if you just treated me like I mattered. But you didn't. You learned it now because I finally stood up for myself. And I'm not sure that's the same thing as genuine growth. Where are you going? She asked as I grabbed my briefcase. Guest room, I said. Same place I've been sleeping all week. Because apparently marriage vows don't count as family credentials in this house. I left her there with her candles and her tears and her chicken parmesan. And I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because caring about myself had to come first for once. In the guest room, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of explaining. Tired of being the one who had to justify why I deserved basic respect and inclusion. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. I really am sorry. I love you. I looked at it for a long time before responding. Love without respect isn't love. It's just manipulation in a prettier package. She didn't text back after that. And honestly, the silence was kind of nice because peace, I was learning, wasn't about candles and apologies. It was about finally valuing yourself enough to walk away from people who didn't. Turns out $3,000 a month is a lot of money. I know, shocking revelation, right? But apparently Laura's family hadn't quite grasped this concept until the checks stopped clearing and reality came knocking at their door like a very aggressive bill collector. And let me tell you, watching the dominoes fall from my position of newly discovered financial independence was more entertaining than anything Netflix had to offer. It started small little things I noticed through the social media grapevine that I was still technically connected to, even though I'd muted most of them. Becky posted something about tightening the belt and getting back to basics, which was hilarious, coming from a woman who'd posted 17 different brunch photos in the last month alone. Her husband, Ronnie, the guy who'd wanted to grab a beer and talk it out, suddenly had his golf clubs listed on Facebook Marketplace. The same golf clubs he'd bragged about buying just 3 months ago. Premium set, barely used, priced to sell fast. Real fast. Then came the bigger stuff. Laura's parents, Richard and Janice, the king and queen of We Might Lose Everything, listed their lake cabin, the lake cabin they bought 2 years ago, the one they'd used for weekend getaways and family gatherings, and apparently the vacation I wasn't invited to. The listing went up on a Tuesday, and by Friday, Laura was having what can only be described as a complete meltdown in our kitchen. They're selling the cabin, she said like she was announcing someone had died. The cabin where we spent every summer, where we made memories. Where I sent $3,000 a month to help maintain. I finished for her, not looking up from my laptop, where I was researching vacation destinations for one, that cabin. She glared at me like I just kicked a puppy. You're enjoying this. I'm not enjoying anything, I said, which was partially true. I wasn't enjoying her pain. But was I feeling a deep sense of satisfaction watching natural consequences play out for people who treated me like garbage? Absolutely. I'm just observing. There's a difference. They're losing everything because of you, she said, and the accusation in her voice was thick enough to cut with a knife. I closed my laptop and gave her my full attention because this needed to be said clearly. No, they're losing things because they made financial decisions based on income they didn't earn. They built a lifestyle on someone else's money, mine specifically, and didn't plan for what would happen if that money stopped. That's not on me. That's on them. That's called poor financial planning. And ironically, it's exactly what you accused us of having when you canceled our vacation. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. And let's be real here, I continued. They're not losing everything. They're selling a vacation cabin, a luxury property, a second home that they bought with money I was sending them while telling me we couldn't afford a vacation. Do you hear yourself right now? Do you hear how absolutely ridiculous this sounds? She didn't answer, just stood there with tears forming in her eyes again, and I was honestly getting tired of the waterworks. Crying had been her go-to strategy for weeks now, and it had stopped working around day 3. Meanwhile, I was living my best life. And by best life, I mean I was finally experiencing what it felt like to keep my own money. Without that monthly $3,000 drain, my bank account was actually growing. Revolutionary concept, I know. I'd look at my balance and just smile. Sometimes I'd transfer money into savings just for the thrill of it. Sometimes I'd buy the expensive coffee beans without checking the price first. Sometimes I'd order dinner from the nice restaurant instead of eating leftovers. And every single time I felt a little more free at work, things were actually getting better, too. My colleague Mike noticed the change first. "Dude, you seem different lately," he said during lunch one day. "Like lighter or something. Did you start meditating?" "Nah," I said, biting into my sandwich. A really good sandwich from the deli I usually avoided because it was too expensive. I just cut off some toxic expenses. Freed up a lot of resources. "Smart man," Mike said. "Cutting expenses is good financial planning." Yeah, I agreed, smiling. That's what I keep telling people. Funny how it only counts as good planning when it's not affecting them personally. My boss even noticed during my quarterly review. She said, "I don't know what's changed, but your work has been exceptional lately. You seem more focused, more confident. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Just practicing better boundaries." I told her. Turns out when you stop letting people drain your energy, you have more of it for things that actually matter. She nodded approvingly. Good leadership skill. Knowing when to say no is just as important as knowing when to say yes. Best performance review of my life. And all I had to do was stop funding my own emotional abuse. Who knew? But back at home, the atmosphere was getting increasingly tense. Laura was caught between defending her family and acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, they'd screwed up. She'd go back and forth, sometimes trying to guilt me, sometimes trying to seduce me, sometimes just crying at random intervals like a sprinkler system with faulty wiring. The family group chat that I'd left, apparently, it had turned into a full-blown crisis management center. Laura would read messages from it out loud to me like I was supposed to care. "Becky says they might have to take the kids out of private school," she announced one evening. "Public school is free and perfectly adequate." I replied without looking up from my book. Millions of kids go to public school and turn out fine. It's not a tragedy, it's a budget adjustment. My mom says they can't afford their mortgage payment this month. Then maybe they should downsize to something within their actual means instead of living in a house they can only afford with my monthly donations. Ronnie lost his job. That one made me look up. Ronnie lost his job, or Ronnie got fired for selling golf clubs during work hours on Facebook Marketplace. She didn't answer, which was an answer. 2 months passed like this. 2 months of watching Laura's family scramble to adjust to a lifestyle they could actually afford instead of the one they'd been living on my dime. 2 months of increasingly desperate attempts to get me to turn the money back on. 2 months of me sleeping better than I had in years. Then came the group text, not to the family chat I'd left, but directly to my phone from Janice. "We hope you're happy. You broke this family." I stared at that text for a solid minute, feeling absolutely nothing. No guilt, no regret, no sadness, just a kind of peaceful certainty that I'd made the right choice. I typed back slowly, making sure every word was exactly what I wanted to say. I didn't break it. I just stopped financing the glue. The responses came fast and furious after that. "Becky, that's so cruel." "Ronnie, real mature man." "Richard, we took you in like a son." "Janice, after everything we did for you," I responded to the group. "You didn't take me in like a son. You took me in like a bank. There's a difference. And what you did for me was accept $72,000 over 2 years while excluding me from family events. That's not generosity. That's exploitation. But sure, call it revenge if it makes you feel better. I call it budgeting." Then I muted all of them. Every single one. Didn't block them, just muted because I wanted them to be able to see that their messages were being delivered but ignored. Small petty. Absolutely satisfying. You have no idea. At work, they'd started calling me Mr. Financial Freedom. It started as a joke when I showed up with expensive coffee one morning and Mike said, "Whoa, look at Mr. Moneybags over here." But then I explained the whole situation, the family, the vacation, the exclusion, the $3,000 a month, and suddenly everyone was on my side. "Dude, you're a legend," Mike said, "you literally cut off toxic expenses and improved your life. That's not revenge. That's financial literacy." Even my boss, when she overheard part of the conversation, chimed in, "Cutting off toxic expenses is exactly what we teach in leadership training. Doesn't matter if it's a bad vendor or a bad relationship. If something's draining resources without providing value, you eliminate it." "See," I said to Mike, "it's not petty, it's business, it's both." Mike laughed. "But mostly, it's awesome." I'd never felt more validated in my life. At work, I was getting praised for the same decision that Laura's family was calling cruel and vengeful. Funny how perspective works, isn't it? When you're the one losing free money, it's a tragedy. When you're the one finally keeping your own money, it's called self-respect. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. Not for the house, not for Laura, not for us, just for me. I bought new clothes that actually fit instead of wearing the same stuff from 5 years ago. I bought a new watch that I'd been eyeing for months, but always talked myself out of because money was tight. I bought a gaming console that I'd wanted since college, but never justified because there were always family expenses that took priority. I came home with bags of stuff, and Laura looked at me like I'd committed a crime. "You went shopping?" she asked, staring at the bags like they contained evidence of my moral failure. "Yep," I said cheerfully. Turns out I have disposable income now. Wild, right? It's almost like when you stop giving away $3,000 a month, you can actually afford things. That money could have helped my family, she said quietly. That money is helping someone who actually values me. I corrected me. I value me. Revolutionary concept, I know, but I'm really enjoying it. She didn't say anything else. Just watched as I unpacked my purchases. Each item a small declaration of independence from a family that had taken me for granted for years. That night, lying in my guest room bed, which I'd upgraded with new sheets because why not? I calculated my savings. In 2 months, I'd saved over $12,000. $12,000 that would have vanished into the black hole of Laura's family expenses. $12,000 that was now mine to do with as I pleased. And you know what I pleased to do with it? Plan a vacation. A real one just for me. Because if I was going to be excluded from family vacations anyway, I might as well make my own. 2 months turned into 3, and 3 turned into 4, and with each passing week, the family's group chat apparently descended into what can only be described as a blamefest of epic proportions. I knew this because Laura kept accidentally leaving her phone open to it or reading messages out loud with this pointed tone like I was supposed to feel guilty and immediately reverse course. Spoiler alert. I did not. The messages were honestly impressive in their creativity. They'd moved past simple guilt trips and entered the realm of full-blown victimhood narratives. According to the gospel of the family group chat, I was single-handedly responsible for everything from their financial troubles to global warming. Okay, maybe not global warming, but give them time. I'm sure they'd find a way to blame me for that, too. It was a Tuesday evening when the group chat really resurrected like a zombie that refused to stay dead. I was making myself a steak dinner. A nice ribeye that I'd bought without checking the price tag first because that's the kind of baller move you can make when you're not sending $3,000 a month to people who don't like you. When Laura's phone started buzzing like it was having a seizure. Oh God, she muttered looking at her screen. There at it again. At what? I asked flipping my steak. It was going to be perfect. Medium rare, just the way I liked it. Cooked in a cast iron skillet I'd bought for myself last week. The group chat, she said like that explained everything. They're talking about you. Fun, I said genuinely unbothered. What am I being blamed for today? Economic recession, the fall of Rome, the extinction of the dinosaurs. She didn't laugh. She never laughed anymore. They're saying you broke the family. I plated my steak, added some roasted vegetables that I'd also bought without budget anxiety, and sat down at the kitchen table. Read it to me, I said. I want to hear this. Laura hesitated, but I could tell she wanted to. She wanted me to hear how much I'd supposedly hurt everyone, how much damage I'd supposedly caused, how I was supposedly the villain in this story. So, she opened her phone and started reading. Mom wrote, "We hope you're happy. You broke this family." She paused, looking at me expectantly, waiting for the guilt to wash over me and drown me in remorse. I took a bite of steak. It was delicious, perfectly cooked, worth every penny I didn't send to her family. Okay, I said. What else? She scrolled. Becky says, he's tearing us apart. We used to be so close. We did. I asked genuinely. Were we close when you were planning a vacation without me? Was that the closeness everyone's mourning? Because I must have missed that memo. Laura ignored me and kept reading. Dad says a real man would help his family in times of need. That one made me laugh. Actually, laugh out loud. Mid-chew almost choking on my perfectly seasoned steak. A real man, I repeated. Okay, sure. Let's talk about real men. A real man doesn't lie to his son-in-law's face about budget issues while planning expensive vacations. A real man doesn't accept monthly payments for 2 years and then exclude the person paying from family events. A real man doesn't emotionally manipulate someone and then act shocked when they set boundaries. But sure, I'm the one who's not a real man. That tracks. You're being cruel, Laura said. And there were those tears again right on schedule. No, I corrected, pointing my fork at her for emphasis. I'm being honest. There's a difference. And honestly, I'm tired of being called cruel for having the audacity to stop letting people treat me like an ATM with abandonment issues. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been keeping a running tally of my savings for months without sending $3,000 a month meant. I'd saved over $12,000. Actually, with interest and not stress buying things because I was depressed, it was closer to $13,000. I showed Laura the screen. See this? I said, this is what your family calls breaking them. I call it fixing me. Perspective is wild, isn't it? She looked away, but I wasn't done. I was on a roll. And honestly, that steak had given me energy and confidence. You want to know what's really breaking your family? I asked. It's not me cutting off money they never earned. It's the fact that they built their entire lifestyle on someone else's income and never thought about what would happen when that person got tired of being used. That's not my fault. That's theirs. That's called consequences. And apparently it's a brand new concept for everyone involved. They needed that money. Laura said weakly. They wanted that money. I corrected. There's a difference. Needed implies necessity. Your dad didn't need a lake cabin. Becky didn't need private school for her kids. Your mom didn't need to host elaborate turkey dinners with lobster tails and champagne. They wanted those things. And I made those things possible. And they thanked me by treating me like I was invisible. So, forgive me if I don't feel terrible about the natural consequences of their choices. My phone buzzed. I looked down and saw that somehow, despite having left the group chat months ago, I'd been added back in, probably by Janice, who had admin privileges and apparently no sense of boundaries. The latest message was from her, and it was directed at me, even though she clearly didn't think I could see it. He's destroyed everything we built. Years of family bonds gone because he couldn't handle one mistake. I stared at that message, feeling something shift inside me. Not guilt, not sadness, just a kind of crystalline clarity that comes when you realize someone is so fundamentally wrong that it's almost beautiful in its completeness. I typed a response. My fingers flew across the keyboard with the precision of a man who had finally completely run out of patience for other people's nonsense. I can see all of these, by the way. And for the record, you didn't give me everything. I gave you everything. $72,000 over 2 years to be exact. You gave me a family-only vacation caption and a masterclass in conditional acceptance. Not exactly a fair trade. You didn't make one mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions to exclude me while benefiting from my money. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. And I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to fund my own exclusion anymore. Big difference. I hit send and watched the chaos unfold in real time. The typing indicators went crazy. Becky started typing. Ronnie started typing. Richard started typing. Everyone had an opinion and they were all desperate to share it. Becky, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So vengeful, Ronnie, bro, you're really going to die on this hill. Richard, we raised you better than this. That last one made me laugh so hard I nearly spit out my wine. Raised me? I typed back, you didn't raise me. You tolerated me as long as I was useful. And FYI, Richard, I'm pretty sure my own parents raised me and they raised me to have self-respect and boundaries. Thanks for your concern, though. Janice jumped in. This is what's wrong with your generation. No sense of family values, no loyalty. I took a deep breath, finished my bite of steak, and composed what would be my final message to this group chat. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted it to capture everything I'd been feeling for months. I wanted it to be so clear and so definitive that there would be no room for misinterpretation. Let's talk about loyalty, I typed. Loyalty is a two-way street. You want to talk about family values? Family values means including your son-in-law in family vacations instead of lying to him about money. Family values means not exploiting someone's generosity for years and then acting shocked when they stop being generous. Family values means treating people like they matter, not just their bank accounts. You don't get to cry about broken loyalty when you were never loyal to begin with. You were loyal to my money, not to me. There's a difference, and I'm sorry you're just now learning it. I paused, then added one more thing. Also, this isn't revenge. It's budgeting. You know that thing Laura told me we needed to do when she canceled our vacation? Turns out she was right. We didn't need to budget. So, I budgeted you out of my life. Not because I'm vengeful, but because I'm finally valuing myself enough to stop funding people who don't value me. Call it whatever you want. Revenge, cruelty, selfishness. I call it self-respect. And it costs exactly $3,000 less per month than my old life did. Then I left the group chat again, deleted the whole thing from my phone, blocked the group number so they couldn't add me back. I was done. Completely, totally, utterly done. You shouldn't have said that, Laura said quietly, staring at her phone where the messages were probably exploding with outrage. Probably not. I agreed, cutting another piece of steak. But it felt amazing. And you know what? I'm tired of not saying things because they might upset people who have zero problems upsetting me. I'm tired of being the one who has to be understanding and patient and forgiving while everyone else gets to be selfish and demanding and cruel. I'm tired of playing a game where the rules only apply to me. At work the next day, I told Mike about the group chat incident. He literally stood up and applauded. Dude, that's the most badass thing I've heard all week. You just verbally destroyed an entire family dynamic in one text message. Multiple text messages. I corrected. I wanted to be thorough. Even better, he said, you know what this is? This is leadership. Standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, refusing to accept treatment that's beneath you. They should teach this in business school. My boss overheard again. These cubicle walls are way too thin. And actually came over. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but watching you develop boundaries over the past few months has been impressive from a professional standpoint. You've gone from someone who lets people walk all over them to someone who knows their worth and demands respect. That's growth. Thanks, I said, genuinely touched. It only cost me $72,000 in a marriage to figure it out. Cheap twice the price, she said. Seriously, self-respect is priceless. Everything else is just money. That evening, I came home to find Laura packing a bag. Not a small overnight bag, a big suitcase. The kind you pack when you're leaving for a while. Going somewhere? I asked, though I knew the answer. My parents' house, she said without looking at me. I can't do this anymore. The fighting, the tension, watching you destroy my family. I'm not destroying your family, I interrupted. Your family is experiencing the natural consequences of their actions. That's different. Whatever, she said, zipping up her suitcase. I need space to think, to figure out if this marriage is even worth saving. And you know what? I didn't try to stop her. Didn't beg her to stay. Didn't promise to change or reconsider or turn the money back on. I just said, okay, take all the space you need. She looked at me like she'd expected me to fight for her. But I was done fighting. I was done begging to be valued. I was done being the only one trying to save something that maybe wasn't worth saving. She left and I finished my dinner alone in a quiet house that suddenly felt more peaceful than it had in years. For months turned into a beautiful, peaceful existence that I'd started calling my freedom era. Laura was still at her parents' house, occasionally texting me things like, "We should talk" or "I miss you." Which I'd respond to with increasingly non-committal replies like, "Okay," or "Noted." Because I discovered something revolutionary. I didn't actually miss the chaos. I missed the idea of marriage. Sure, the companionship, the partnership, all that wholesome stuff, but the actual reality of being married to someone who valued her family's comfort over my basic human dignity. Yeah, I wasn't missing that at all. And my bank account was absolutely thriving. It was like watching a plant grow after you finally remember to water it and give it sunlight and stop letting toxic people drain all its nutrients. I'd open my banking app just to look at the numbers sometimes, which I know sounds ridiculous, but you have to understand, for years, watching money vanish into the void of family expenses had become so normal that seeing it actually accumulate felt like witnessing a miracle. For months of saving $3,000 a month, plus the money I wasn't spending on trying to make Laura happy, plus a decent bonus from work for that killer project I completed, meant I'd saved over $12,000. Actually, with everything factored in, it was closer to 14 grand. $14,000 that was mine, all mine, sitting in my account like a middle finger to everyone who told me I was being selfish. So, I did what any rational person would do with their newfound wealth and freedom. I booked myself a vacation, a real one. Natada, maybe we can afford this if we cut back on everything else vacation. A proper no-expense spared first-class flight and oceanfront resort kind of vacation to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, because I'd always wanted to go and Laura had always said it was too expensive while simultaneously funding her family's lake cabin adventures. The irony was not lost on me. In fact, I was drowning in irony. Swimming in it, building a house out of irony bricks, and living their rentrée. I spent an entire Saturday planning this trip. And let me tell you, it was the most fun I'd had in years. I wasn't checking prices compulsively. I wasn't calculating whether I could afford it. I wasn't asking anyone's permission. I was just choosing things I wanted. A beachfront suite with a private balcony. Sure. All-inclusive meal plan at the resort's 5-star restaurants. Absolutely. Scuba diving excursion? Why not? Deep sea fishing trip? Hell yes. Spa package. You know what? I deserve it. By the time I was done booking, the total came to just under $8,000 for a week-long trip. $8,000. The old me would have had a panic attack. The old me would have canceled it immediately and put the money toward family expenses. The old me would have felt guilty for even looking at the prices. The new me? The new me hit confirm booking with the biggest smile on my face and zero regrets. I didn't tell Laura about the trip right away. Why would I? We were separated. She was at her parents' house probably being told daily about what a terrible person I was. And honestly, I didn't owe her an explanation for how I spent my own money. But word travels fast in the age of social media. And apparently my excitement was visible enough that Mike noticed at work. You're in a good mood lately, he said during lunch one day. Like suspiciously good. Did you win the lottery or something? Better, I said, pulling up the resort photos on my phone. I'm going to Cabo solo for a week. Leaving in 3 weeks, Mike whistled, looking at the pictures of pristine beaches and infinity pools. Damn, that's fancy. Good for you, man. You deserve it after all the crap you've been through. Thanks, I said, and I meant it. It felt good to have someone actually support my happiness instead of making me feel guilty for it. How much did this run you? He asked, then immediately backtracked. Sorry, that's rude. You don't have to. $8,000, I said, not caring about the money talk. $8,000 for 7 days of paradise. You know what the best part is? That's less than 3 months of the money I was sending to Laura's family. 3 months of funding people who didn't value me or 1 week of experiencing pure uninterrupted joy. Seems like a pretty easy choice. Mike raised his coffee cup to financial independence and self-respect. I'll drink to that, I said, clinking my cup against his. That evening, I made the mistake of posting about my upcoming trip on Instagram. Just a simple post with one of the resort photos and a caption that said, "Solo vacation countdown begins." Sometimes you have to choose yourself. Basic stuff, the kind of thing people post every day without drama. Except, of course, nothing in my life could be dramery. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up. Laura called, declined. Her mom called, declined. Becky texted a paragraph about how inappropriate it was for me to flaunt my wealth while her family was struggling. I replied with a screenshot of my Instagram post and wrote, "I'm posting about a vacation I saved for with my own money. You know, the money I used to give you. Yeah, it turns out when you keep your own paycheck, you can afford nice things. Wild concept." She didn't respond to that, but the best or worst, depending on your perspective, came from Richard, Laura's dad. He sent me a long text message that I had to read 3 times to believe was real. "I can't believe you're spending thousands on a vacation while my daughter is suffering while our family is struggling to make ends meet. You used to be a good man. I don't know what happened to you, but this isn't the person we welcomed into our family. You should be ashamed of yourself." I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes, watching my blood pressure rise in real time. Then I took a deep breath, cracked my knuckles like I was about to type the great American novel, and composed my response. "Richard, let me break this down for you in terms you might understand. I'm spending $8,000 on one vacation for myself. Over 2 years, I sent you $36,000. $36,000 in family support. That's 4.5 Kobo trips worth of money that I gave to your family. Money that helped fund your lake cabin, your lifestyle, your family vacations that I wasn't invited to. You didn't think I should be ashamed when I was sending you money every month. You didn't think I was a bad person when I was working extra shifts to support your family. I was a good man when I was useful. Now that I'm spending my money on myself, suddenly I'm terrible. The math isn't mate, Richard. And Laura isn't suffering because of me. She's experiencing the consequences of choosing a family that excluded her husband over the husband who funded them. Big difference." I hit send before I could second guess myself, then blocked his number. I was done explaining myself to people who would never understand. 3 weeks later, I was at the airport with a single suitcase, a boarding pass for first class, because if I'm doing this, I'm doing it right. And a smile that probably looked unhinged to anyone who didn't know the backstory. I posted a selfie at the gate with the caption, "Family and only vacation." Just me, myself, and my debit card. The responses were mixed. My actual friends, the ones who knew the whole story, flooded the comments with support. "You deserve this. Enjoy every second. Live your best life." Mike commented, "Mr. Financial Freedom strikes again." Laura's family. "Well, let's just say they had feelings." Becky commented, "This is petty." I liked her comment but didn't respond because sometimes silence is the best answer. Janice sent me a DM. "I hope you're happy with yourself." I replied, "I actually am. Thanks for asking." And then muted the conversation. Laura herself sent a broken heart emoji. Just that. No words, just the emoji. I looked at it for a moment, felt a small twinge of something. Maybe sadness, maybe regret, maybe just the ghost of who I used to be. And then I replied with a thumbs up emoji because what else was there to say? The flight to Cabo was incredible. First class meant real food, actual leg room, and a glass of champagne that I accepted with zero guilt. I toasted to myself at 30,000 feet, looking out the window at the clouds below, and thought about how far I'd come in for months. From a guy who couldn't say no to a $3,000 monthly drain to a guy flying first class to Mexico on his own dime. Character development at its finest. When I landed in Cabo, The warm air hit me like a hug. I took a deep breath of ocean air, grabbed my suitcase, and headed to the resort shuttle, feeling lighter than I had in years, maybe ever. The resort was even better than the photos. My suite had a king-sized bed, a balcony overlooking the ocean, and a mini bar that I raided immediately because I was on vacation, and calories didn't count when you were celebrating freedom. I unpacked, changed into swim trunks, and headed straight to the beach. The sand was white, the water was impossibly blue, and there wasn't a single person asking me for money or making me feel guilty for existing. It was perfect. I sat up in a beach chair, ordered a drink with an umbrella in it because when in Cabo and pulled out my phone to take a photo, the ocean stretched out in front of me. Endless and peaceful. I snapped a picture and posted it with the caption, "Turns out when you stop funding other people's dreams, you can afford your own." My phone buzzed immediately with notifications, but I turned it on airplane mode without looking. Whatever drama was brewing back home could wait. I had a week of absolute peace ahead of me, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. I took a sip of my drink, some tropical thing with rum and pineapple that tasted like liquid happiness, and smiled at the ocean. For months ago, I'd been sitting in my home office looking at a video of a family vacation I wasn't invited to, feeling worthless and used. Now I was in Cabo drinking an overpriced cocktail on a beach that I'd paid for with money I'd earned, and I didn't owe anyone an explanation or an apology. That evening, I had dinner at the resort's fancy restaurant. Lobster because why not? Expensive wine because I deserved it. Chocolate lava cake for dessert because life is short and cake is delicious. The waiter asked if I was celebrating anything special. "Yeah," I said, raising my wine glass. "Independence Day Personal Edition." He didn't get the joke, but that was okay. I got it and that was enough. Later, back in my suite, I stood on the balcony watching the moon reflect off the ocean, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. No guilt, no anxiety, no wondering if I was doing enough for people who didn't appreciate it. Just peace. Just me. Just freedom. And it had only cost me everything I thought I wanted to get everything I actually needed. 6 months, half a year since I'd canceled those automatic transfers and accidentally discovered what self-respect felt like. Half a year since the family-only vacation that had changed everything. And in all that time, not a single member of Laura's family had actually apologized. They'd guilt, manipulated, blamed, and complained, but nobody had actually said, "We were wrong and we're sorry." Until Richard called. I was at my desk at work finishing up a project proposal when my phone rang with a number I'd unblocked a few weeks ago in a moment of weakness or maybe strength. I still wasn't sure which. "Hello," I answered, cautious. "Hey," Richard's voice came through and he sounded different, tired, older somehow. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but could we meet for coffee? Just you and me. I want to talk." Every instinct I'd developed over the past 6 months told me to say no. To protect my peace, to maintain my boundaries. But there was something in his voice, not manipulation, not guilt-tripping, just genuine exhaustion that made me pause. When I asked, "Tomorrow? That place downtown you like?" "My treat. I'll pay for my own coffee," I said firmly. "But yeah, tomorrow at 2. The next day, I walked into the coffee shop 7 minutes late because I refused to be the one sitting there waiting, looking eager. Richard was already there, and when I saw him, I almost felt bad, almost. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. His hair was grayer, his face more lined, and he was hunched over his coffee cup like it was the only thing holding him together. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. I ordered my coffee, the expensive one, because I could afford it now, and waited. This was his meeting. He could start. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, not meeting my eyes. "A real one, not the kind where I apologize, but then explain why you're also wrong. Just an apology." I took a sip of my coffee and said nothing. Let him work for it. "We made a mistake," he continued, and his voice cracked slightly. "A big one. We assumed you'd understand. We assumed you'd be fine with it. We assumed a lot of things about you because you never complained, never pushed back, never said no. And that's on us, not you. We took advantage of your generosity and we justified it by telling ourselves we were family and family helps each other. But we weren't helping you. We were just taking." I kept my face neutral, but inside something loosened. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement that he was finally seeing it. "Laura's been miserable," he said quietly. "Living back home, crying every night, realizing what she lost. The whole family's been different. Without the lake cabin, without the easy money, everyone's had to actually look at their lives and figure out what they can actually afford. And it's been hard. Really hard." "Good," I said, and my voice was flat. "It should be hard. That's called reality. That's what most people live in while you all were living in a fantasy funded by my paycheck. You're right. Richard nodded and he looked me in the eye for the first time. You're absolutely right. And I know saying sorry doesn't fix it. I know it doesn't undo the hurt or give you back the $72,000 or the years of being treated like you didn't matter, but I am sorry. Genuinely, deeply sorry you needed that wake-up call, I said, leaning back in my chair. You all did because you weren't going to stop. You would have kept taking and taking until either I had nothing left or I had a breakdown. And you know what the sad part is? If you just invited me to that vacation, we probably wouldn't be here. If you just treated me like I actually mattered instead of like a convenient bank account, I would have kept helping. But you didn't. You chose a caption over a relationship. I know, he said, and there were actual tears in his eyes now. Genuine ones. We were wrong. We were selfish. We were, he paused, searching for the word entitled. We felt entitled to your money because you never said no. And that's not an excuse. It's just the truth of how we saw it. We needed this. Needed to lose everything to understand what we had. I took another sip of coffee, processing. Part of me wanted to stay angry to hold on to the righteous fury that had sustained me through 6 months of rebuilding myself. But another part, a quieter, more tired part, just wanted peace. No hard feelings, I said. Finally. I mean it. I'm not holding a grudge. I just reallocated funds from family drama to self-respect. Better return on investment. Richard laughed. A short, sad sound. Always the engineer. Everything's an equation. Some equations are simple. I said respect equals respect. Value equals value. If the equation doesn't balance, you solve for the missing variable. In this case, the missing variable was my self-worth. And Laura, he asked carefully, have you talked to her? She texts. I admitted a lot. Says she misses me. Says she's learned her lesson. Says she wants to work on things. Do you believe her? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know. I said honestly. Maybe she has learned. Maybe she hasn't. But either way, I learned something, too. I learned what I'm worth. And I'm not going back to being someone's optional extra who only matters when it's convenient. That's fair, Richard said, nodding slowly. More than fair, actually. We sat in silence for a moment, the coffee shop noise filling the space between us. Finally, Richard stood up, extending his hand. Thank you, he said. For meeting me, for listening, for being honest, and for teaching us all a lesson we desperately needed, even if we hated learning it. I shook his hand. You're welcome. And Richard, good luck. I mean it. I hope you all figure it out. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed. Laura, right on cue, miss you. I looked at the message for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I would have melted at those 2 words. Would have run back, eager to make things work, willing to forget just to avoid being alone. Now I typed, ask Becky if she can Venmo that feeling. And for the first time in my entire relationship with Laura, I laughed genuinely, freely laughed at my own joke, not caring if it was petty or mean or justified because it was true. And truth, I'd learned, was more valuable than keeping the peace. I walked out into the sunshine, my coffee in hand, my bank account healthy, my self-respect intact. The family had their wake-up call. Laura had her regrets. Richard had his apology. And me, I had something better than all of that combined. I had peace. Real earned, hard-fought peace. And apparently, it only cost $3,000 less a month than misery. Best investment I ever made.